Well, hello there. I am very glad that you decided to spend a little bit of time with me here. I am Dag Peak. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Alianza, and I've got a little story to tell. And that story is fundamentally the fact that here in the middle of 2024, this really is the most exciting time that I've ever experienced in my entire telecom career. And so let me get started with this. I'm going to start with this very simple picture. And what this picture represents is the fact that the entire concept of telecom can be boiled down to this idea that what we're trying to do is to create a line or a path over which two or more things can communicate. That's telecom in a nutshell. Now, back in the very olden days, the very first thing that we did was take a long spool of wire and string that wire between two locations, and then start to transmit these dots and dashes of Morse code to do remote communications. That's where it all started. Not long after that, in 1876, Alexander Graham Bell figured out how to transmit the sound of the human voice over that wire. Now, between then and now, we've had some innovations. We went from the ability to transmit the sound of the human voice to transmitting digital data in IP packets carrying everything, but the concept still holds. You've got a source, you've got a destination, and there's a path that connects those two to enable remote communication. Now, what I would suggest is that over the entire history of telecom, almost every single innovation that our industry has developed has done one of two things. That innovation has either extended the reach of those connections or has made the delivery of those connections more efficient. So let's talk about reach first. I remember back in the olden days that telecommunications to me was, as a child, going into the kitchen and grabbing that handset off of the phone that was hanging on the wall there and making a call. And in terms of reach, right, the really big innovation back in those days is that my parents bought one of those really long curly cords so that, I could take the handset and move from the kitchen all the way out to the living room and have a call out there. And I remember literally how cool that was, not having to stand right next to the phone, instead being able to sit on the couch and have that phone call. So we've gone from that to the ability to basically communicate from anywhere. Everybody now has a mobile phone in their pocket, and you can take a call from your office while on a walk, in your car, out on a cruise, whatever. Reach has been solved. Now the next bit, let's talk about efficiency. Back in the olden days, the very first telephone switch looked like this. And what it was simply a human being sitting there with a wire in their hands connecting this side to that side. And so we went from that, a human being switching the calls, to mechanical systems that did the same thing, to electronic TDM systems that did the same thing, right? Effectively the same thing, just doing it a little bit more efficiently, to the world of VoIP, where we have software applications transmitting IP packets over TCP connections, but all fundamentally doing the same thing, just doing it faster and more efficiently. The next stage is to go from software applications running on servers in service providers' networks, creating all those connections, to the cloud, right? And I call the cloud the world of Telco 3.0. If TDM was Telco 1.0, voice over IP applications, Telco 2.0, we're now in the world of Telco 3.0 with the cloud. But let's think about it. That service being provided, that circuit or that path for people to communicate over, it's really all stayed the same regardless of the systems that are enabling that service. We've gone from the dots and dashes of Morse code to the sound of human voice to every kind of data stream, including voice and video and content, screen sharing, etc. But fundamentally, it's all the same thing. People or systems communicating at a distance. Okay, but yes, it is a little bit more complex than that. Over the last 150 years, we've done a little bit more than just give people connections. And I'll talk about now some of the kinds of connections that have been enabled with voice systems to date. And so let's talk about the 6 important telephony services that are being delivered over these networks today. First, residential voice. Residential voice still matters. There are still people in this world who are using fixed landlines to communicate with people. I'll give you a perfect example. Directly to my north here, my next door neighbor is a woman named Mary. Mary is about, let's just say she's in her mid-60s. Mary's got 7 cats, and I have gotten into the habit of helping Mary with her, let's call it technology. The very first thing that I ever helped Mary with is her VCR. She had a VCR, and one day that VCR died. So she called me up on her landline and said, "Hey, Dag, my VCR failed. Can you please help me get a new one?" And so I went over there and we ordered her a new VCR and DVD combo. And I also realized at that point that she had this really, really old cordless phone. It was so old that she couldn't get more than about 5 or 6 feet away from the base station before she couldn't have a phone conversation anymore. So I thought to myself, "Hey, Mary, you've got this landline, you've got this old cordless phone. Why don't we just get you a new mobile phone and, forget about this old landline?" And you know what she told me? She said, "No way. I love my landline. It's reliable. I know how it works. I don't want to have to deal with a smartphone. So can we please just keep my landline?" And so I said, "Yeah, you got it. This works for you, works for me, all good." Point being is that there are still millions and millions and millions of fixed landlines out there today that are not going to go away entirely anytime soon. So that's key use case number 1. Key use case number 2 is this notion of business voice. There are still millions and millions and millions of businesses in this world whose primary way to interact with their partners, their customers, their other locations is over a telephone call. So we call that a business line. Now that's not very different than a residential line. Maybe it's got a couple more features. Maybe there's a hunt group or an auto attendant there. But business voice is still relevant. That's use case number 2. Let's go to use case number 3. So out in the world, there are still millions upon millions of systems like burglar alarms and fire alarm panels and point of sale terminals that are all getting their connectivity back to their home station, whatever that is, the burglar alarm monitoring system, the fire alarm monitoring people, the core system for that point of sale terminal. Those systems are still getting their connectivity back to their core systems over specialty lines, which are effectively voice lines, but they're running a special proprietary protocol over those voice lines to get their connectivity. The point is, there are many, many of those systems still in place. Not all of those systems have been converted to an IP-based system yet. Those systems still need to be serviced today. Third use case, specialty lines. Let's go to our 4th use case. And this is the concept of an on-premises PBX. Now, an on-premises PBX was a very typical business voice solution where a business would decide that they basically wanted to run their own little voice system at their business. So they would take something that looked like this, and they would put it in a rack, in a cabinet, or a closet in their office, and they would run their own phone system. There are still millions upon millions of PBXs still deployed out in businesses today. Now, the key service that telecommunications service providers deliver to those PBXs is basically a connection between that PBX and the regular old telephone network, either over a PRI trunk or a SIP trunk, but it is that trunking service that is still highly in use today for those end customers that have PBXs on site. Now, of course, there are plenty of PBXs that are moving to the cloud, and that brings us to our next service, which is this idea of hosted PBX. But not all of those on-prem PBXs have been converted into hosted PBX yet. So while hosted PBX is absolutely growing and a key service that needs to be delivered today, both on-prem PBXs need their service alongside of the hosted PBX service, which is our fifth use case here. Now, telecommunications service providers are also delivering this service called UCaaS. And what does UCaaS refer to? UCaaS means Unified Communications as a Service. Now you might ask yourself, what service is actually being unified here in Unified Communications? And just so we're all crisp on what that means, Unified Communications unifies three key services. It unifies voice calling, like you can see this guy has a telephone on his desk to do voice calling. It unifies video collaboration, right? So the ability to have these multi-party video conferences with screen sharing. That's the second key service. And then messaging or chat. So it is those three things that are being unified in the world of unified communications as a service. Okay, so if those are our 6 key use cases, what I'm going to do now is represent each of those with these set of 6 boxes. Now this is going to be very, very important. Let's go to the next conversation here. Today, as we sit here in the middle of 2024, the systems that service providers are using to deliver those 6 key telecommunications services are basically dying. They really are. So let's think about this. So the systems that telecommunications service providers are using today to deliver those services are primarily legacy TDM systems, right? So we were out at a very big service provider a couple of weeks ago, and we went into this central office downtown, and we saw this big TDM switch that is still, to this day, delivering services. TDM still exists. Service providers had started the modernization process, right? Going from TDM to systems like BroadWorks from BroadSoft, going to Metaswitch from Microsoft, going to Genband systems. So there's a number of different systems that telecommunications service providers use today to deliver these services, but they're all going away. They're going away. TDM switches are slowly dying. Microsoft just recently announced significant layoffs in the Metaswitch group. That is going away. Cisco has little interest in the typical traditional BroadWorks business, and Genband was acquired by Ribbon, where their focus is really on optical transport. So, if all of those services today are dying, and we still need to be able to support all of those services, where are they all going to go? Where are those services going to be delivered from in the future? Well, the answer to that is obviously the cloud. The cloud. This is where all systems IT workloads are ultimately going. And this is exactly what Alianza is building. Alianza is building the best cloud-based landing zone for all 6 of these critical telecommunications services. And it is this fact right here, the fact that we can support all 6 of those services from our cloud, that makes Alianza the best core communications transformation solution in the industry. Now, I bring all of this up because there is, I would say, a fair bit of confusion in the marketplace around what Alianza really is. What are we? I've had many people ask me, from analysts to customers, they'll often come to me and say, hey, Dag, are you a UCaaS vendor? Are you different from Microsoft? Are you different from RingCentral? Are you different from Intermedia? And I say, yes, we are very, very different. And the next couple of slides are going to outline how we are different. Let's compare ourselves to RingCentral. First, I'll make the very specific statement. RingCentral is absolutely not a core communications transformation solution. What RingCentral really is, what their business really is focused in on one of those 6 use cases. And that use case is going out to businesses that have legacy on-premises PBXs and converting them to the cloud. Converting that PBX to the RingCentral Cloud UCaaS offer. Now they have a nice solution for that, no question. They do a very good job of going to a company that's got a PBX and converting that PBX over to a very nice UCaaS solution. But the key notion is they don't cover all 6 of the key use cases, which means they can't go to a service provider and fully transform that service provider's set of services to the cloud. They can support one of those use cases very well. Now let's call it 2. Cloud PBX and UCaaS, they do that very well. They can kind of do business voice, just kind of the analog line thing, but that's certainly not in their wheelhouse. And they absolutely do not do residential. They do not do on-prem PBX trunking, and they do not do specialty lines. So sure, RingCentral, nice little UCaaS solution, but not core communications transformation. I would put Cisco in a very, very similar bucket. Their primary business, at least as it relates to moving unified communications and PBX services to their cloud, to WebEx calling, is very much focused on PBXs. I would say the main distinction between RingCentral and Cisco is that Cisco is very much focused on bringing BroadWorks hosted PBX to the Cisco WebEx cloud, and very focused on converting their own Cisco Call Manager on-premises PBXs to WebEx calling. So again, these guys, Cisco, are in the PBX modernization business and not in the business of completely modernizing all of the service providers' telecommunication services, right? Those full set of 6 services, right? They don't do residential voice. They don't do SIP trunking. They don't do specialty lines. And so while they do have a nice solution to bring Call Manager to the cloud, they are not core communications transformation. A year or 2 ago, I would have put Microsoft into a very similar category as Cisco and RingCentral, meaning 2 or 3 years ago, I would have said that yes, they are also in the business of basically modernizing enterprise communications, modernizing PBXs, going from on-prem PBXs to the Microsoft Cloud with Microsoft Teams. But Microsoft has changed dramatically over the course of the last 2 years. Today, Microsoft is not an enterprise productivity and enterprise communications company. Today, Microsoft is an AI company. What Microsoft cares about today is artificial intelligence, and then the next layer down is driving Azure workloads. If you go look and see what their press releases have looked like recently, if you go look at their public filings, it is all about AI and it is all about Azure. Of course, Teams is still somewhat relevant to them, right? It has been widely adopted in the mid to large enterprise. But I will tell you that at this stage of the game, for them, Microsoft Teams is primarily a conduit or a channel through which to drive artificial intelligence capabilities. They don't care about residential voice. They're not doing any kind of trunking. They don't care about specialty lines. They are absolutely not a core communications transformation solution like we are, like Alianza is. Okay, so I am going to speak to a little bit more about what's happened with Microsoft and what's happened with Metaswitch recently, but before I get to that, I do have a very, very important point to cover as it relates to Alianza's business. So you saw this picture before, and this shows how Alianza is building that landing zone in the cloud. Now let's take a look at this arrow here. That arrow represents a vital component to our business, and that is the fact that migrations are critical to Alianza. So having our cloud landing zone for all 6 of those services is not good enough to get to the revenue that we want. Because if we have this landing zone and do not have a way to move those services from the old platforms to the new platform, we're dead. We must have a very scalable, efficient, and robust way to move those services off of the old platforms to us. And I will tell you that we have that. We have spent a huge amount of effort in ramping up our people and our processes and our tooling in order to be able to effectively migrate any of those 6 key services from the old platform to the new. And I will tell you that this is a major, major competitive advantage between us and anybody else. RingCentral, Intermedia, Cisco, none of them can hold a candle to us when it comes to large, mass, efficient migrations of those 6 traditional services over to us. Sure, they will talk about their migration capabilities, but if you press down on what that really means, they are talking about migrating off of some PBX to their service. And in a lot of cases, what that migration means is not some kind of automated mass scale migration, but a simple re-provisioning of the service where the end customer basically calls up like RingCentral and says, hey, RingCentral, I need my auto attendant set up this way, and I need my hunt group set up this way, and I need my extensions and telephone numbers routed this way. And RingCentral will sit down with them and do that and call that a migration. Intermedia will do the same thing and call that a migration. That is very, very different than going into a Metaswitch and pulling out all of the subscriber information at once, extracting that and then transforming that and then re-provisioning that in mass scale, and doing ports and device swap overs over the course of a night or 2 or 3. Our kind of migrations that we're implementing with our ETL capabilities and our migrations team and our new migration tool sets are very different than what others can do from a migrations point of view. Again, a major competitive advantage for us. Okay, I do want to do a little sidebar here on Microsoft because our world has changed. The market dynamic that we are operating in has changed dramatically since June 3rd, 2024. That is the day that our world changed here at Alianza. And the reason that that is the day that the world changed is because that is the day that Microsoft effectively killed the Metaswitch business. That is the day that they laid almost everybody off from that business. They laid off almost all of the salespeople. They laid off almost all of the sales engineers. They laid off the bulk of the professional services people. They laid off big chunks of the support organization. Microsoft has stated publicly, I don't know if I should say publicly, but Microsoft has stated, and we've seen these statements, that they are no longer interested in providing what they're calling network/telephony applications, right? Of which Metaswitch is absolutely one of those. That is not their business. Their business is Azure and driving big mass scale workloads onto Azure, of which artificial intelligence is one, and continuing to deliver, just traditional telephony services off of platforms like Metaswitch, totally uninteresting to them. And so this is wonderful news for us. This is amazing news for us. This puts huge wins in our sails. And again, coming back to this notion of being more excited than ever about being in the industry, this is one of the reasons. Okay, so let's come back to this idea of these 6 core telecommunications services, right? We've got residential voice, we've got business lines, we've got specialty lines, on-prem PBXs getting its connectivity through some kind of trunk. We've got hosted PBX and UCaaS. And so now I think I know what you might be thinking. We're trying to talk about all these things that are exciting and fun, and we're talking about residential landlines. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. If this was all that we were talking about, if we were just talking about delivering these 6 key services, off of some rented computers in Amazon that forms the core of our cloud, yeah, that would be super boring. But that's not what we're talking about. We are talking about much more than that. We are talking about the idea of a whole new era in telecommunications, a whole new Telco 4.0 era. And this is the era that is powered by artificial intelligence. This is the era where we will be able to bring this technology to bear to empower and enrich the communications that are happening on this network. And this is what I am most excited about. Now, okay, maybe you're a little bit skeptical that we're going to be able to do anything special here because, today, you might say, and you'd be right, this is already happening. How many press releases have we seen over the course of the past couple of months talking about how widely deployed AI already is? We've got AI in contact centers, right, being widely deployed. We've got things like Read.ai. This is this artificial intelligence-based system that can join meetings and do all kinds of interesting things. We've got Copilot, the Microsoft version of Copilot, being pushed through the entire Office productivity suite. We've got Copilot in Microsoft Teams and in Outlook and Word and PowerPoint, yada, yada, yada. Yes, AI is absolutely being leveraged today, but I would say that it's primarily being leveraged today in this particular segment, right? The segment of the large enterprise, the segment that is primarily staffed by knowledge workers. Now, of course, knowledge workers, like you, like me, right? I sit in front of a screen all day, every day. You sit in front of a screen. You are a knowledge worker. We have the ability, through these screens, to consume all kinds of interesting AI services. But let's not forget about this. Just because you and I are all well-paid knowledge workers, that does not mean that everyone is a knowledge worker. What I'm really trying to say here is that we should absolutely not be forgetting Main Street America. Because Main Street America, those businesses that represent 99.9% of the businesses in the United States, something like 32 million of them, many of those companies are not getting a really good way to take advantage of AI because their workers are not sitting in front of screens every day. So let me give you an example of how this can work. And I'm going to give you the example of Mountain Ridge Auto Parts. So Mountain Ridge Auto Parts, this is a fictional chain of 5 auto parts stores scattered around rural West Virginia. And I'm just going to pretend like I am the owner of Mountain States Auto Parts. So at Mountain States Auto Parts, I obviously have to have phone service because my customers call me and my stores call each other. And my stores have to have the ability to call emergency services if anything goes wrong at any of my stores. And so I have bought 4 or 5 lines per store to get telephone numbers for my stores, for dial tone at my store so employees can pick up the phone and make a call. Emergency services are a part of that. And I also do some things like I've got some hunt groups and auto attendants, and I do some announcements like to tell customers what my hours are and such. So it's a pretty basic service, right? So I'm spending a couple of $100s a month. And what am I getting? Fundamentally, I'm getting that connection, right? If we think about the connection from earlier in this little story here, I'm getting a connection. I'm getting a connection to the telephone network so my customers can call me and I can call out. And that's what I'm getting for a couple $100 a month. But you know what? As a business owner, I am kind of interested in what's happening on those calls that are coming into and leaving my stores. Like, I have questions. I really want to know what's happening on those calls. Like, I would love to know, what are my customers calling about? I would love to know, which of my employees gives the best customer service on those calls. I would really love to know, like every time a customer hangs up, how satisfied were they feeling about that call? Were they happy? Were they sad? Were they frustrated? I'd love to know if a sale was made or if a sale was not made. If I could have answers to those questions, I would have a feeling of getting a great deal more value from the phone service than just getting telephone numbers and dial tone. And Alianza, this is exactly what we're going to be doing. This is exactly what we are doing. So while we're going to be delivering telephone numbers and dial tone and a set of telephony features on groups, auto attendance, etc., what we're going to be able to give our end customers, and importantly, our service providers, and importantly, Alianza, is deep and meaningful insights into what's happening on those phone calls. And so let's break away here, and I'm going to do a little demonstration of what this might ultimately look like. So what I'm going to do now is show you the Alianza Call Analyzer. All right, now the very first thing we're going to ask it is, what is your purpose? And we can see what it is designed to do. It is going to give us call trends and call volumes. It's going to do content analysis. It's going to do performance metrics and sentiment analysis. It's going to do all kinds of interesting things. I can simply ask it to list my stores. All right, that's pretty straightforward. I very much want to understand what parts callers are calling about. And so the call analyzer can show me that. Next thing I'll do is ask it which stores have the best sentiment scores. Which stores are providing good phone service. And it comes back with Rivertown. But I want to get deeper into that. Tell me more about that. And look what it does. It is telling me why Rivertown has got a superior sentiment score. It says there's a very high quality of customer service. There's efficient resolution of queries. There's lower wait times compared to other stores. This is all absolutely incredible information. Well, let's ask it some more. Let's see, which employee has the best sentiment scores? And it comes back and says, Kimmy. Kimmy indeed does have the best sentiment score. She got a score of 9.3, but let's go deeper than that. Let's ask the machine why Kimmy has such good scores. So how does she get such good scores? And the machine will assess what exactly she is doing to achieve good sentiment scores. She has very good customer service skills. She's quick and accurate with her responses to inquiries. And we all know Kimmy. She is a positive and friendly person, so that's her particular tone. She's very effective at problem solving and very consistent in follow-up with customer issues. What else can we ask the machine? Let's ask it something to the effect of, tell me more about that. And so it will go even deeper into, what's going on with my stores, what's going on with call volumes, what issues are occurring, if there's any variance in employees. It'll tell me if there are abusive calls happening and what sorts of themes my customers are experiencing. Okay, so I will make it clear. This is very much just a simulation, right? This is not actually operating on real call data, but what I will tell you is that what we're seeing here is going to be a capability that we are going to be able to build. The advances in AI are happening at an astonishingly rapid pace, and we will be able to have machines that will be able to assess these calls and give our customers and our service providers and us really deep and meaningful insights into what's happening on the network, and that is going to have just enormous value for Alianza. Okay, that was the Alianza Call Analyzer. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. I said at the top that this really is the most exciting time that I've ever experienced in all of telecommunications. And it's not because we're taking all of these key critical telecom services and moving them to the cloud. Sure, that's super cool. I love this idea of being able to deliver those telecommunication services in an even more efficient manner than we've ever been able to do it. But it's what we can do once those services get to the cloud that really blows my mind. Once we get those services to the cloud, we will be able to deliver really interesting services on top of those 6 key services. Deep insights for our customers to understand what's happening on their phone network. Virtual agents, right? An agent that will be able to answer a call and interact with a caller almost as well as that small business's employees could do. I can't even begin to contemplate how many different use cases we're going to be able to drive using AI into our platform to drive enormous value for our customers, service providers, and Alianza. And that's the key notion here. We live in an amazing time. We work for an amazing company. Every one of you that's listening in on this right now, you have a role to play in what we're building. And I know that we are going to come together. We are going to build some amazing things. And Alianza really is going to roar into the future. And I can't wait to do it with each and every one of you. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.